Hello everyone and welcome to episode 67 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. My name is Court and joining me are Impetus and Saint. I hope you lads are doing well this week. This week is all about the Ghosts of the Deep Dungeon with a little sprinkling of upcoming sandbox updates. So we have some encounter tips, recommended builds and weapons, and of course the usual weapon breakdowns. Before we do, let's take a moment to thank our community members. Impetus.
Hello folks. Hope you guys are doing well. Very excited to talk about this dungeon. But yes, we do have some special people to thank. We don't have any new patrons, and we haven't gotten any special messages from folks or reviews, so I am just going to jump into thanking our sponsors. These folks support us over on Patreon, and they go above and beyond in their support, which is why we thank them each and every week. Those people are A Modern Viking, Askian Monk, Bryce Aroni, Deacon, I'm K Rose, Moonlight, Shazzle, and This Moment. Thank you so much, folks, for all of your support. As a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. All kinds of feedback help with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and so much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We do want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports the show, whether that is downloading and listening, discussing it in the Discord server, or of course supporting us via Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, if you would like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channel in the Discord server, behind-the-scenes info, input on the future of the show, and access to the legendary annual merch drop. You can also check out our sibling podcasts, Destiny Massive Breakdowns, which dives into the nitty-gritty PvP sandbox with Lego LaFlash, and our Star Wars podcast, Beneath Twin Suns, that explains it all with Mercules and Kit Kutcha.
We are going to be kicking things off with some spicy sandbox changes that were thrown out in the June 15th TWID, and then it's on to the Ghost of the Deep Dungeon. We're going to start off with encounters, builds, tips, and pain points there, and then we're going to go into a bit of a weapon breakdowns segment, our bread and butter there. Not a lot of housekeeping updates or anything like that or corrections, but feeling good about the kinetic trimmers roll that we recommended on spare rations at the end of last episode, because now that is not just some hopium. That has been totally vindicated, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So if you kind of listen to the end of the episode, for episode 66, you know that there was not a ton in that Reckoning Reprise set that we were talking about, but now there's a reason to be going after at least one of these weapons. Before we get into all of these changes from the TWID, let's do our classic, what have we been up to in and out of Destiny for the past week. I'll start us off and just say, still doing some Last Wish runs. Great raid, so it's really not a chore at all to be going through and doing a bunch of runs of that each week, just rounding out all of the crafted stuff. Age-old Bond has been a lot of fun to use. Also leveling up Acacia's Dejection, getting some GM builds ready. GMs just started this week. But really what I'm focused on is farming for the Braytech Osprey and the Loaded Question, which both have some kind of old weapons returning with some unique and potentially pretty spicy rolls. Really excited to get my hands on those guys later in the season. Also, just keep working on my games backlog here. I've been playing through Doom 2016, which is highly acclaimed, and I'm getting it. I've been listening to the music for a long time, and playing the game to back it just makes sense. And then going back through Halo Infinite as somebody's a long-term Halo player. I'm reminded how good the grapple felt in this game. If you've never played Halo Infinite, there's a lot of focus on like the different Spartan kind of like kits abilities and stuff like that you can get throughout the campaign as well as in multiplayer. But one thing that the grappling hook allows you to do, and it's not hard to, it's like hard to not directly compare this to like Strand, right? But one unique thing in Halo about the grappling hook is that you can use it to pull objects towards you. So you can like reach out and grab a weapon off the ground and pull it into your hands, or grab like an explosive coil, or like grapple yourself into a vehicle. And like there's the ability to like pull something towards you is, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Court, what have you been up to?
Not a lot. to be honest, at least on Destiny, did do one dungeon run, and that was pretty much it. It was all armor, which was not what I was wanting. I have all the armor, the really lovely, sexy armor, but I was after some of the weapons, so I could talk about them later on in this episode. Other than that, just been playing DMZ and Warzone recently. There's a new season going on for Call of Duty 2022. And I'm in the process of upgrading my PC. I say it's an upgrade. It's actually a brand new build.
Hey, you.
I do have a RTX 4080 coming at some point. So a new monitor as well. I'll have 3 monitors by next week's episode. But looking forward to that. That is coming out this week. So yeah, the nerdy PC guy in me is going crazy. Impetus, what have you been up to?
I was in that one dungeon run. That was my only dungeon run for this week as well. I did get some weapons. One role I'm excited to talk about a little bit later on. And beyond that, I was doing a few seasonal challenges and decided to put on the Hierarchy of Needs bow, finish up that catalyst. That took forever. So that's pretty much all my Destiny energy consumed by that just awful primary exotic catalyst grind. 700 enemies with a bow that is not designed for ad clear is really tedious. So, got a bunch of those destination seasonal challenges done where you have to go do public events and lost sectors and all that other stuff in Nessus, Throne World, and EDZ for the season. So that was me. If you saw me, some dude with a Hierarchy of Needs doing a public event and screaming at you when you didn't turn heroic, that was me. So thank you for that. It's not been a great Destiny week. Outside of that, though, not a whole lot of gaming for me. I've got some other stuff that I'm taking care of. Got an apartment recently, so I'm getting ready to move for that in August. So, yeah, won't be spending that money on a new PC anytime soon. But happy to play the version of Destiny that I have right now. So. And it's getting even better based on this TWID that we got kind of a glimpse into what's coming right around the corner here. This is our 6.15 TWID highlights. Of course, we're only going to be taking a look at the stuff that's curated towards the PvE sandbox, but there were some very exciting things for PvP as well. This is a preview of Season 22 mostly, but there's also some changes that were hinted at as just coming later. So seasons after that, and then even some Final Shape exclusive stuff. So we're going to be taking a look at ability changes, weapons changes, a little bit of armor and build crafting, and then some interesting miscellaneous changes as well. I'll start us off on the ability side here. And so this was mostly in the form of a Q&A that various teams were kind of answering some questions here. And we'll start with the abilities team. The question there was, can we lower the Strand Tangle cooldown timer? And the team answer there was they don't have any plans to go back to what it was during testing, which was very little timer, and that led to random explosions going off all over the battlefield based on Tangle interactions. So they found that was too hectic during playtesting, so that's why the initial Tangle cooldown is 15 seconds. However, they are aware that does feel a little too long, so they are reducing that cooldown from 15 seconds to 12 seconds, and that is coming in Season 22. I think we're all very, very excited about that change. It did feel a little bit too long, especially for all the cool synergies that do rely on the Strand Tangles. So universally a good change. Everybody liked that. Another one that I'm definitely looking forward to here, sticking on the Strand Train, Threadlings are getting a quote-unquote sizable increase to their damage versus combatants. That will be wonderful news for Warlocks. I hope that Hunters and Titans can start getting in on that goodness through what may be some future aspects or fragments. Right now it really does feel a little bit unfair that only one class gets to play around with this, especially when they're getting a buff right around the corner. And on top of that, Suspend, which is something that I know our Titans really, Titans and Hunters get to enjoy this probably way more than Warlocks. Suspend is getting a reduction in duration and sources uptime, which I think we all saw is coming.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's too good.
Probably our strongest verb ever. So no surprise there. And then, of course, they did clarify that the Broodweaver's aspect, the Wanderer, which came out this season, season 21, will be buffed to address community feedback. I still don't know what that does. I have it unlocked. I just haven't put it on because it wasn't better than what I have currently. But, I'm always excited for stuff to get buffed. I just need to go look at what that does again because it's not Mindspent Invocation, and it doesn't give me more hatchlings or threadlings whenever I put down my rift, and that's just too much fun to see those little guys shoot out. So whatever you do, Wanderer, awesome. Love to see your glow up that's coming in season 22 as well. All of those changes. Last one I'll touch on before we go over to weapons is this is just general grenades, not related to Strand. Coming in season 22, they will be making some small adjustments to the uptime of a few underperforming grenade options. I don't want to speculate here, but I'm sure we can all think of a few grenades that was like, yeah, I remember when this was just locked to my one specific class and I never used it because it wasn't good. Hopefully that might change, especially with a few of the other grenades certainly rising to the forefront. So good abilities changes. You guys got anything to add before we go over to weapons?
I mean, Warlock's eating good.
I feel like the
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like that tangle cooldown could maybe go down to 10 seconds. 12's quite an odd number, but I understand why there's a cooldown, because, having many tangles out in the world space, and being able to throw them and lots of explosions, probably not very good for the engine. But yeah, I'll take that small reduction.
Mm-hmm.
I was fully expecting the suspend nerf. I thought we'd get it this season, but no, season 22 definitely did. Lots of too much of suspend. It's a very good verb, but it's got all the benefits of stasis freeze without the negatives.
Mm-hmm. And when you can counter almost every champion type with a single verb, that's not it.
I don't have overload rounds or barrier anti-barrier at the time. I'll throw a suspend.
Yeah, it was guaranteed for like Glassway. I was like, why even run barrier most of the time? I'll just suspend the guy up and like we'll melt him. Moving on to weapons. This is kind of the specific note that we were talking about. I was making a joke about at the very beginning of the episode. Last episode, we brought up hand cannons in kind of the couple different ways that they could be buffed, and Bungie said, "Por qué no los dos? Huh? Why? What? Let's just come at it on both angles. We are getting a reload speed buff and a damage increase. So not a crit multiplier is the original thing, and they just went for outright damage. So damage increase is going to be 20% to rank and file minors and 75% to elites, which is like low tier majors, which is awesome. Really sizable buff there, considering they just got a pretty equivalent buff to minors like one season ago. And we also get the reload speed buff. Reload speed at 0 stat is increased by 15% and scales down the higher that rises. So 100 is unchanged and 0 reload is increased by 15%. This is really a big benefit to hand cannons with low reload, like aggressive and precisions. And this is like Impetus' exact point last game or last episode about if you want to have their like DPS go up, reload go down, and it just felt so bad on some of these hand cannons that were rolling out of the gate with reload stats in the 20s and 30s. We're just feeling really weak. So that's great to see. And then finally on hand cannons, new / revamped frame type, Heavy Burst. Warden's Law is returning and will be the first member of a new / revamped subfamily. I'm thinking maybe Nightfall weapon next season. We'll see. They didn't exactly say when these hand cannon changes were coming, but we're kind of assuming it's going to be next season or sometime around there. Previously, this used the double fire frame, which fired twin rounds, but was pretty inconsequential, and the frame was sunset. And said the revamped frame will be a 2-round burst and is overall much more satisfying to use than the previous version, while still benefiting from some of the unique properties of the original. End quote. And I don't know how you guys...
Cool.
Yeah, I'm like, this was kind of useless, and now it sounds like it could be useful. Any other hand cannon thoughts here?
I'm assuming this is affecting exotic hand cannons. I'm not saying like this is not what I wanted for legendary hand cannons, but it seems like this is also going to be applied to exotics, which I suppose didn't really need it. The first thing that came to my mind was Storm.
Oh no!
Obviously, that's going to benefit from the reload increase, but also like that thing already hits like a truck with its damage buff. If you're pairing it with Drang, but that 20% to rank and file and elites, it's going to be. That thing's going to be hitting like an absolute, I don't know, like spacecraft into. It's just going to be absolutely wrecking havoc. But yeah, like stuff like Sunshot and Ace of Spades, like those don't necessarily need changes, but I'll happily take them.
Hand cannon's eating good. Sunshot's going to be popping off.
Yeah. I'm looking at all of our exotic hand cannons right now, trying to see who has low reload speed stats. Yeah, okay. Wow.
Ariana's Vow as well.
Oh, yes. There we go. I knew there's one obvious one. That's it.
Yeah.
24 reload speed stat. That is going to be nice.
I need to double check if that's actually with it being, it's a special weapon, so it doesn't benefit from the 40% to red bars.
It should be getting these other buffs, right?
But yeah, that'll also... Yeah, it should be, yeah. I haven't seen or heard otherwise. They would normally kind of make a comment saying this doesn't apply to XYZ, like we saw with Izanaga's Burden last season, or going into this season for the
Dude, and Ariana's could really use it. It's kind of been in the background for a long time, so it's good to see. Good shout out there.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm another hand cannon family after we lost the what was the 150 called? Lightweight, thank you. Yeah. That's interesting. That'd be cool though. I mean, I think Warden's Laws were still dropping after it got sunset, like when you would do just a regular version of Warden of Nothing. I think I've gotten a few of those. That's how I unlocked it. So I've fired it a few times, but I haven't used it in content because by the time I got it, it was already sunset and way below power level. So that's exciting to see that return because it's very cool. The double fire is a cool idea. So awesome stuff there. What else is happening with weapons, guys?
Yeah, Court, you want to keep us going with the kinetics buff here?
Yes, there was a question about kinetic weapons, which I was quite surprised because I think we're in an okay space for kinetic weapons. I don't know if you guys feel the same. I think with the whole overcharge and surge activity modifiers, and kinetics are generally doing okay compared to even like a few seasons ago. But they mentioned here that they're prioritizing shipping more strand and stasis weapons to equalize those numbers a little and to ensure all the slots can tie into build crafting, which I completely agree. We've got a fair amount of kinetics right now, and we've got, I think, more so stasis now because there has been a little bit more of a emphasis on strand weapons, which I don't mind, but stasis definitely needs just a little bit more just to kind of flood the market, so to say, but also strand as well. And they also mentioned here that, so at the moment we're focusing on stranded stasis weapons, but kinetics are getting something planned for the, quote, a year of the final shape timeline that may make them a little more unique, end quote. And they shot down the prospects of a kinetic subclass, which I still don't know how that would have worked in the first place anyway. Just throwing a bunch of shrapnel and pieces of metal everywhere.
Just explode myself, yeah. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. The exotic kinetic weapons are still some of the best. Like, it's the legendaries I can kind of understand, but let's be honest, guys, like, there's still some bangers out there. I mean, I would have thought after all the episodes we've done, all the legendary kinetic specials that we've covered, some people would have something exciting to look forward to, but all right.
They talked about glaives as well. This is for the future. So the kinetic weapons and the glaives changes here. They're talking more in the sort of far future, or season 23 for the substantial glaive tuning pass. schedule for Season 23. So for glaives, the aim is to make them more satisfying to use, and the class-specific exotic glaives are getting some, quote, major changes. And they're adjusting how players activate the exotic perk along with some other changes. So that's big hype, because I know the exotic glaives have been kind of, they came out and they were kind of meh. They're craftable, so like it's got that kind of spin, much like Vex Calibur, which is also craftable. So it's kind of they've been power crept quite substantially, but. I think the Titan Glaive is probably the best out of the three. There is a niche case for Edge of Intent, which is the Hunter... Sorry, I'm getting them mixed up again. Edge of Concurrence, which is the Arc Hunter Glaive. I've been using that quite a lot recently with the new exotic gauntlets that are buffing glaives. But yeah, I think out of the three, the weakest has to be the Edge of Intent. That healing turret, great on paper, but in practice, it
doesn't synergize with anything. That's the issue, right? Like Hunter 1, you can at least have a little bit of synergy with Helmet Saint 14. It's not a lot, but it's still synergy. And then, yeah, of course, the Hunter 1 has got the Triton, brand new Triton exotic. But yeah, Warlocks, we just got a little turret, but like we can't do anything with it. So yeah. Hopefully they get, I would love for them to get catalysts that at least give them some sort of secondary effect or a major buff to the primary effect of them. But yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, I'm hoping this also leads to a little bit more uptime in the way that they like consume ammo and stuff like that. Because when they talk about major rework, I don't think that's like out of line for major rework territory. But yeah, definitely good to see. It's like no weapon left behind. Okay. And these things have just kind of been memed on since they first came out.
I'll take this last one before I hand it off to you, Impetus, for at least for the weapons. So they gave a kind of more generalized comment here for exotic and perk tuning. So this is going to be both Season 21, mid-season, Season 22, and also beyond. So for the mid-season update for Season 21, this is this season of Deep, they've pulled several well-tested changes originally for Season 22 for the balance update, which they'll talk about closer before it ships. A small set of changes to exotic weapons coming in Season 22. That's Le Monarch changes that they've talked about a few times over on the Firing Range podcasts. Merrick went into more kind of detail. Touch of Malice buff, which great, because it's such a cool looking weapon. I certainly hope to see kind of some interesting changes there. It is one of those weapons on paper looks really interesting, but in practice, that whole kind of siphoning off your health, it can be a bit of a pain to kind of micromanage. And then some minor changes to other exotics. They've also mentioned tweaks to perks such as Bipod. Rejoice. Shoot to Loot. We know Shoot to Loot isn't currently working with it was like the explosive payload type of perks. So the AoE isn't properly working, so I think that's what they're referring to that. But I'll take more Shoot to Loot buffs. And also Under Over, which I keep forgetting exists. And they also mentioned, as Chris mentioned on our podcast a few episodes ago, the sword rework. They're talking about doing that for some time. That was Season 22. Also featuring an exotic catalyst for an older exotic weapon. Quote, one that's been heavily requested and likely the most complex catalyst we've ever made. A lot of talk in the community about this. Come on.
What's our guesses?
They're obviously talking
about
I got a
note here that says obviously Monte Carlo. I'm not sure who editor. Can we get this out of here?
All right. Court's saying it's Monte Carlo. All right, Saint, what are you saying?
I'm going way back. I'm going to say Anarchy, because I think Anarchy. We were talking about a little bit about this before the show, Impetus and I think that it is in a perfect state to get a catalyst, right? It's a weapon that has dominated for a long time, got nerfed down a good chunk, is still viable, but not necessarily in the meta, and is at that perfect balance point for a little catalyst buff. And plus, that weapon reminds me of something that could get complicated, or like the ability to do so. Impetus, what are your predictions here?
Yeah, I think I'll probably have to go with either Thorn or Last Word. I do think older and then heavily requested, it's definitely those two that I think of the most when I hear that. Anarchy was certainly requested for a time. Yeah. Complex Catalyst. I mean, Last Word to me is kind of where that comes in, the hip fire stuff. I definitely feel like they could probably give a special version of Offhand Strike or something like that to Last Word to keep it still in that synergy. Or they go in an entirely different route, but I could see them having a lot of fun with the hand cannon catalyst. Now that, given the hand cannons are still so popular, and that's definitely a very dominant weapon on consoles, so, or for controller, I should say. But I would be over the moon with Anarchy or Monte Carlo. I have not played with Monte Carlo enough, and it's definitely one of those ones that I just got to get into a little bit more. So, yeah, another reason to jump in and start playing with those weapons, either again or for the first time. I'll take it. So,
and I think there's kind of been some grumbling, some joke about the Monte Carlo blade, which would definitely support Court's theory here, and that is something that could get very complicated. Right. And that would also kind of fit that bill of the interaction between melee and gun. We were talking about how that would be the first weapon to do that outside of a glaive. So I can't imagine the descriptor of most complex fits in there as well.
Could also be Divinity. You never know.
Divinity. Brother. Target lock on Divinity. Thank you very much.
Oh, it causes all other weapons to get target lock. Xenophage, target lock.
Oh. Don't play with my heart now, man. Also, I got to shout out Touch of Malice buff. I know a certain patron is very happy to see Touch of Malice getting buffed up, and I think we are too, right? It's a very interesting weapon. It's a very famous weapon. Hope to see it be a little bit more of a meta weapon.
We don't know if it's Monte Carlo. We don't know anything. I think it's just the way they've worded this, and there's been like heavy teasing about Monte Carlo getting the glaive treatment. But it will be funny that our first kinetic glaive will be on an exotic weapon that has existed in the game for a while. We haven't got any kinetic strand or stasis glaives in the top slot, and here we go. Here's Monte Carlo. I'm not complaining, because Monte Carlo right now is quite a juicer, and it is anti-barrier auto rifle this season. So if you're speccing into that melee build, then Monte Carlo is your gun. If you like melee based builds, then Monte Carlo.
Yeah, I think it was Bryce that recently.
It did get an ornament this season too.
Okay. That wooden one looks good too. I was going to say...
it's a sexy gun.
Bryce was talking about how well this synergizes with some of the Titan, second chance and point contact builds this season, which I haven't really been one to use Monte Carlo much, but that definitely got my mind thinking about going towards GM. If I could overload with my melee, I got barrier on my auto rifle, or I got barrier on my gauntlets and barrier on my auto rifle. That's a little overkill, but, point remains. Could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we are still due to talk about like kind of underwhelming or kind of not really used a lot exotics at some point. And I was wanting to talk about Monte Carlo, but maybe push that, at least Monte Carlo, push that back to whenever, if it is getting the change. But Monte Carlo is definitely one of those, like it's underutilized and underrated, because folks think the melee trigger is only on kill, but there is a chance to get your full melee back. But as long as you're doing that sustained damage, if you're hitting anything and it's performing damage, it's not immunity but actual damage, then you get a passive regeneration to your melee. There's no cooldown as well. So as long as you're hitting the target, you're going to get your melee back really fast. So. Final point here, they just wanted to kind of talk about the process of exotic tuning, and that's, from their perspective, it's looking at the pain points around over or underperforming weapons, and honestly just looking at the 20 least used exotic weapons, and they pocket that list every season. So I think just kind of put that in perspective, that we're come to expect more of this every season. Maybe not 20 weapons every season, but a few weapons every season, just to kind of, okay, we're going to look at the top and the bottom, most kind of weapons that aren't really being used, or they're being used a lot, and see how we could get around kind of tweaking them. And we saw that with Salvation's Grip, which is, I think, is a lot. It's a fun weapon to use now. Is effectively bowling with stasis crystals. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this process. Yeah, we're not getting everything all at once, but with this being a live service game, then I'm happy to know that they've at least acknowledged that. Yeah, we're working on the list. We're looking at the list every time. And yeah, we got that perspective with Chris on our dev episode, where it's like, it's just a matter of the time, the resources, and can we do this within a set period of time? Is it viable to do it? Do we have new tech? Do we, can someone else take a shot at this? Because for Salvation's Grip, it was the designer for Curve that took a shot, and I think they've done a really good job. So yeah, that was a bit of perspective there. Impetus, we have some armor and build crafting updates as well.
Yeah, so another reference to our dev episode, of course, this time in regards to what Rodney was talking about with the rollout of buffing exotic armor. So they did also, again, address this point here in the TWID. Bungie's plan is to continue buffing legacy gear, like with what they did starting in Season 21. It's their intention to continue to balance exotic armor incrementally over time. Those three words really matter right there. And they say that the next batch should be coming in Season 22. So unlike the exotic weapon process, it's probably not mid-season tuning, more full season tuning that will then get right at the start of the next new season. But they are continuing to look at buffing up legacy gear and making tweaks to existing exotic armor season over season. So nice confirmation of that once again. Got some more news about some plans for exotic synergies between armor and then specific weapons, not in the case of like Triton Glance, which is a whole weapon class, but rather specific exotic weapons. So this is more on the line of Lumina and Boots of the Assembler, or Necrotic Grips and Thorn. So they did say that they want to add more of those synergies in the game, especially for Hunters and Titans, because the two that I just mentioned are Warlock specific. So that is something that I think we also did ask Rodney right in our podcast, or that did come up, right? Did we ask about that kind of synergy?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we had talked about it. And again, this is just a reconfirmation of what they had said at that time of, yep, it's on our radar. We know that that's a fun thing and we want to pursue that more. So saying that once again in the TWAB for everyone to hear, we love it. And then the last thing here for armor and build crafting, the pre-Lightfall mods and those families, the question there was, can we expect to see more of those return with the new mod/build crafting system? And Bungie's response was, the goal remains that base armor mods be straightforward and approachable, and that they follow the behind-the-scenes foundation of your build, not the star elements, which was definitely the case of our pre-Lightfall mod set. They will continue to experiment with fun and novel ways to interact with build crafting via the seasonal artifact, and I think, speaking for myself, I'm enjoying the seasonal artifact of this year. It's definitely been a lot of fun to kind of pursue the new options, especially now that we've gotten a few champion counters out of those later systems because of the implementation into the various verbs. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I know that's going to disappoint some people, of course. They probably want a few more of our more exciting ones to return, but we are in a new system now, and that's, I think, what Bungie is trying to say as gently as possible, is that that may not be in their interests anymore. So, but we'll see. It might be some seasonal artifact returning. We'll see. Had some also miscellaneous interesting things pop up. Saint, what's happening with the shaders?
They're talking about people really want like a favorite shaders selection kind of a feature, and the quote was, "New features in this vein are coming soon," which I think is enough to get any Destiny fashionista up out of their seats at the chance to have your top 3 or 4 shaders or something like that highlighted. So really looking forward to some quality of life there. And then finally, they continue to talk about the HUD and UI updates, and that this is definitely something that they are going to keep sharing more details on as we keep getting closer to the final shape. So it seems like the kind of thing where we're going for a rework here, or they're going for a rework here, and we'll kind of get some updates on that over the next few seasons. Okay, I think that's it for our TWAB here. It's kind of a nice little surprise sandbox update here. Pretty much all good from our front. Let's get into the Ghost of the Deep dungeon. So we're going to start off, kind of talk about our activity, our weapon, or our enemies, our kind of tips for the different encounters, and then we'll go into weapons. So just covering some basic details here. There is normal mode, and then we have master. Master maximum effective level is going to be 1820 in our current season. So you have more shielded foes, more shields in general, arc and solar shields, arc for the knights, solar for the wizards. And again, just a lot more of them if you're going to be doing this on master. And then barrier and unstoppable champions. High barrier knights replace some of your regular boomer knights, and then unstop ogres replace your standard ogres. We also have a litany of overcharged weapons that you can use, as well as some surges. Currently in season 21, you've got your champion counters, Auto, Hinkin, and Scout, Trace, Rifle, and Glaive, and then you have your overcharged traits from Overcharged Armory, if you have space to select that in your artifact. Unstated Hunger, Nanotech Tracer Rockets from Neomuna, Harmonic Resonance, Nightmares, and Noble Deeds, which is previous seasons. It's really great to see Harmonic Resonance in there. I'll talk about how that's going to impact some of our loadout choices later on in the raid, maybe shape this meta a little bit. Also keep in mind, on that same note, Harmonic Resonance weapons are going to be doing that extra damage against Lucent Hive, and that includes all the bosses in this dungeon. With Deeper Origins, you're even getting more out of this buff, so instead of 3.3%, you're getting 6.6% or 6.7% about, and then at 2 times, if you're using a full set of these weapons, instead of 10%, you're getting 20%. And if we have some heavy weapons, maybe a linear fusion rifle, for instance, like Briar's Contempt, you can really capitalize this, and Briar's has a lot to offer. Conditional finality does count for activating the Harmonic Resonance, so even though if you read conditional finality's kind of weapon card, it's not going to say it on there, but it is going to get its kind of stat buffs, but not its damage buff. So once again, conditional finality will work to activate the damage, weapon damage set and all the other buffs, and it will get the handling and reload, but it won't get the damage buff. Yeah, definitely worth it, and we'll be coming back to that when we get to our build section at the end of this. Finally, as of our current season, we have some surges, arc, and then either strand or void, depending on the week. And as a reminder, when you match your subclass to that surge, your kinetic weapon, even if it doesn't fall under any of the previous criteria that we listed, will be affected by that. Yeah. All right. Let's just talk about our special enemies, our unique targets in this dungeon. Court, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so you will be seeing a lot of Lucent Hive. You'll be seeing a lot of from the Hive. But for the Lucent Hive, we've got all the variants are here. I think really we've only seen a lot of the Void Titan Knight from the Lightbearer Strike, but we've got the Solar Hunter Acolyte, the Void Titan Knight, and of course the Arc Warlock Wizard. Little kind of note on the iconography here. So if it's a triangle icon, they receive major spec type of damage bonuses. If it's a diamond and skull icon, it's a boss spec. They all, of course, are affected by Vorpal Weapon, and as we've been talking about, Harmonic Resonance as well. Various mini bosses as well throughout the raid. They don't really get named. They're more for like triggering a bunch of activity modifiers or kind of to start the next phase or something like that. But they spawn throughout the dungeons. We've got wizards, we've got ogres, we've got knights. They're major spec. And of course, Vorpal Weapon to increase damage. And of course, Lucent Moths, those Oh, well, they're the true enemy. They're the true boss in this in this dungeon. So just a reminder: either they track towards you and explode, or combatants they track towards combatants to overshield them. Overshields, these type of overshields, get increased damage from shield base perks like adaptive munitions, under-over, and armor-piercing rounds, and they are treated as an arc environmental hazard, so treat it as a near-death if you are hit by one. So, some good-to-know modifiers when it comes to the dungeon here. So we've got the Vestige of Light buff. Killing a Lucent Hive and crushing their ghost provides this buff. The person who performs and finishes that ghost crush first gets the buff. The timer begins at 1 minute 20 seconds, and when it reaches 0 without imbuing or inputting the buff, it will kill you, and you'll see these in all counters. So in counter 1, the buff is imbued on a hive statue corresponding to the correct hive glyph. Counter 2, the buff is imbued on any of the 3 main hive statues. And in counter 3, the names are a little bit switched up just on the basis on what hive guardian that you actually kill. So the buff is named Vestige of the Acolyte, Knight, or Wizard, and they're imbued on one of the 3 body parts corresponding to the correct hive glyph, which requires deep sight vision to be active. We've got boss shields here, a little note. So to highlight that the boss's huge overshields when you go into damage phases, Ekdar and Simuma will begin their respective damage phases with a fully charged overshield, which negates damage and nullifies precision damage. So you want to strip that overshield first before casting supers or any high burst damage from weapons or abilities. Arbalest will one-shot the shield. I've only seen this in normal mode. I think it's the same in Master. Correct me if I'm wrong. But definitely in normal mode, the Arbalest will just completely remove that shield. So if you've got a teammate who can run that, then go for it. But of course, you've got your other armor and barrier perk, like adaptive munitions, under-over, armor-piercing rounds, etc. They're also effective. So we're not obviously with these dungeon and raid episodes, we're not necessarily doing a full breakdown. We're just giving the big highlights and kind of pain points. So we'll kick things off with the first encounter. Impetus, you want to take over from that?
Yes. So this is you'll spawn into this encounter, and then you'll go in to the very back of the map, kill 2 knights, and that's what will prompt this encounter to properly start. You will need to imbue 4 vestiges of light into their corresponding statues to end the hive ritual. You're going to see Arc Knights and Solar Wizards present here, and then because you're in a large open space, there will be a lot of active roaming Lucent Moths, and then you will face, over the course of this encounter, all variants of Lucent Hive, which you'll need to defeat to gain that Vestige buff. One note here about moths. There will be some times when moths spawn in their aggro state. As a reminder, when a moth is not in an aggro state, its first priority as a behavior will be to seek out a nearby hive to then provide that overshield. Only when there are no hive around or when they spawn in will they turn into the aggro state and come after you. So do be aware of that. If you can avoid a moth or shoot it before it's in that aggro state, that's the best time to do it. But also if there are hive enemies around, the moths will seek them out actively before targeting you. So you can use that behavior to your advantage to keep yourself alive and also not have to worry about taking that massive amount of damage that those aggroed moths deal. But yes, they will be all over the map, littered about. There is a mini-boss wizard that will spawn the deep sight vision orb, whatever you want to call it, that little field that you need to stand in. On Master difficulty, the Unstoppable Ogres replace the normal ogre, which is used to spawn that initial goop that lets you track to the symbols on the floor. So not a whole lot of strategy for this. You can hop on your Sparrow, drive around this encounter. It's a longer encounter. Definitely if you're going into this solo, it's going to take a lot of time, but that's true for a lot of the encounters in this dungeon. You just want to track and find the hive glyph around the open arena, kill the ads in the Lucent Hive to gain the vestige, and then go and dunk at the correct hive statue found by using deep sight vision when you're back in that main ritual area towards the back of the map. You just do that 4 times and the encounter is over. you do get a really good overview of all the mechanics and modifiers here. So this is a great time if if you're going in for the first time to really, make sure if you're going in with a group of people for the first time that you all familiarize yourself with what's going on, communicate with each other, agree on names for all of your symbols. I know some people like to get a little funny with them, but this is the perfect time to do that because it's going to matter a little bit more when you go on to the later encounters and you also have a boss that you need to defeat. For our recommended weapons and builds here, again, this is mostly going to be an ad clear section with occasional high health targets here. So we'll kind of go through each of our respective classes. For Warlock, I'll start us off here, is really going to be Arc or Strand are going to be your two main abilities there if you want to use Chaos Reach on Arc, and then of course our one and only Super First Strand. Use that against your Lucent Hive or other high health targets, depending on if you're on Master. That'd be a great option there. And then, of course, just use your ability kit for crowd control. Threadlings are going to go crazy here. Arc Souls are going to be really great for your Arc, especially if you can give them to your teammates. So that's my recommendation for any Warlocks. Court, what do you recommend for Hunters in Encounter 1 here?
Much like the rest of the dungeon here, it's going to be a lot of kind of ad clearing, and I think one build that seems to be resonating with a lot of hunters is Arc Hunter. It's either Liar's Handshake or Assassin's Cowl if you're going for that kind of typical ad clearing, but start your scales as well, just to really hype up the damage for Gathering Storm. So combination blow plus flow state plus lethal current makes easy work due to the high damage melee, and of course the AoE jolting effect. Heavy-handed to spew out all of those orbs of power, as a few patrons and Impetus keeps wondering how I managed to get about 500 orbs of power at the end of the activity. That is why. There's no cooldown. So there's lots of orbs being spewed out, so it's not a meme though. That definitely helps with obviously armor charging and of course getting everyone super back. And not much going to be talking about this very subclass for the next two encounters, so I'll save it for them. For our resident titans, what are you recommending, Saint?
I'm going to be going Arc for pretty much the whole dungeon. If I'm on Master, I'm going to go Strand, just because the ability for the chain counters, like we're talking about, Suspend is just too strong. Opening up here, I'm either going to be going Hoyle with my Pulse Grenade focus build or Melee with the Point Cannon Contact Brace build. Weapon-wise, I would definitely recommend running something like Blinding GL with the Cold Heart, and pretty much heavy at choice. Cold Heart is, I know this is like a Warlock's weapon, Ball and Sunstar, right? But I just really enjoy it. It's just a good weapon, and the way that it has been updated is really nice. And then we'll be switching things up to do a little bit more damage in the later encounters, but that's about it. You guys got anything else to add on the opening encounter here?
Not a whole lot. I tried using a Waveframe grenade launcher, and there's just a few spots where the architecture will kind of screw you over there. The blast is going to suddenly go a direction you didn't want. So I do think like a regular single shot GL, blinding or spike, or either one would be probably a better bet there. There are some other rooms that where blinding GLs will be really potent, but yeah, probably not for this opening encounter. Cold Heart's going to be great. Trace rifles in general, I think, would be pretty great because you can use them at a good distance and use the various trees and rocks for cover. So.
Yeah, it's to your point, it's a very uneven environment on the floor, but it is a very cool environment. Yeah, seeing the way that they did the whole bubbles in this dungeon, honestly, is pretty cool, because I would not really have enjoyed being underwater for an hour straight, personally. But, they got around that pretty easily. All right, let's jump into Encounter 3, our first boss here, or Encounter 2, I should say. I'm looking further down the script. Ekthar, the Shield of Savathun. So your main objective here is to imbue 3 vestiges of light to cause Ekthar to become vulnerable. And there is going to be kind of a lot going on here. It's going to be pretty hectic, but there are some ways to keep this managed while you are kind of running your objective and kind of clearing out the ads at the same time, because there's going to be a lot of ads up on the top side of this arena where you need to be clearing them out and then like actually activating the mechanic with your buff. So we're gonna have 2 mini boss knights, a mini boss ogre, and those are what you are gonna need to spawn the deep sight vision orb. On master, the knights are arc shield and the ogres are unstoppables. You're also gonna have 3 Lucent Hive wizards that will allow you to gain the vestige of light, and then a mini boss knight at the start of the damage phase, which spawns the pool that you actually use to strip the boss's shield. Ekthar is going to roam around on the land, so to say, prior to activating the deep sight vision, and then underwater. And then finally, he'll be back up top when he is vulnerable. He can cast his Sentinel Shield super when your damage phase begins. And that's pretty lethal. You should watch out for that. Definitely if you're on Master or if you're not super high leveled, the shield throw can deal a massive chunk of damage to you from a pretty far range. As far as like clearing out the ads go, there's a few ways to handle this. I would definitely say the wave frames. Okay, wave frame in the opening encounter, not good. Wave frame is second encounter, great. And you can just shoot one shot down to chain a nice reaction of enemies, or salve or salvo forbearance, whatever have you. And then also something like conditional finality, right? We've been talking about that buff and the way that is able to clear out enemies with ignitions is really nice. And that's just kind of your first layer here. And when we get down to the actual strategy, Cord, I think you laid out the ABC here. You want to cover this real quick?
Yeah, so there's fairly amount of jobs to be doing in this. So A is kill the mini bosses to get Ekthar to despawn from the drylands. He'll go back down into the sea and do his stuff there. B, deep sight to see where the glyphs that you need. They'll be hanging up on the left and the right. Have 1 or 2 people to go underwater to activate the statues. There's various maps out there in the wild now. Very useful to have that on your second monitor or your mobile device. And the spare person to keep control of the ads, or the spare 2 people. And then C is imbue with the dryland statues and then begin damage phase when ready. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of things happening here. The ads can, and they will, absolutely wreck you, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I've recommended the Arcs Hunter build. So yeah, ad clearing potential. Same kind of 2 damage phases, pretty much the above average. You can absolutely 1 phase, but you do need to be very highly efficient with your burst damage, debuffs, buffs, all that stacking goodness. Otherwise, 3 or even 4 damage phases is perfectly valid. And do remember to crush his ghost. If you don't, you'll spawn back in and you'll have to do another damage phase. It's not an entire damage phase. He'll come back with like it's like 5% of his health, if I can remember correctly. It didn't happen in my runs, but yeah. For weapon and build recommendations, so yeah, I wonder who's put conditional finality in here. But no, that is absolutely valid to talk about if you're pairing it with the various nightmare weapons. Tracked cannon, we've been using quite a lot. Impetus, you've managed to bring that into a few runs just to get that 30% damage debuff. Legend of Acreus is definitely showing its work here, and if you're going down the solo route, at least for a hunter, Lament is doing some really good, decent work here as well. Any other weapons we suggesting here? I mean, anything that's close and personal. Mm-hmm. Because rockets and grenade launchers, not going to do much use here.
I like to use my body as a weapon personally, and use Curious to just throw myself at the boss. Impetus, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to ask, can you suppress him out of his super right there at the start of damage phase? I haven't seen that done yet, and I didn't know if that's possible with like a well-timed grenade. Well,
tracked cannon has suppression as well, so
he's not
sure.
Got,
actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, so he's got his. Does he still have his bubble up though? when he pops super, or do you have to burst that down while he's in super? That's what I can't remember, because I think if he's got his bubble up, then that might not work. I don't know. I just haven't hit him. I don't know, actually. No, because I have Tractor Cannon on. I'd have to... This is where I should have been filming my runs so I could go back and check, but that would be a pretty big strat, though, if you could like have that one person that stays up while the other two people are down, just having that primed and ready so that when the time comes... I don't know.
I know you can suppress boss icon Lucent Hive, but because he's like an actual encounter boss, I'm not sure. Because I like when we go into damage phase, heals pop his super, and we're working on the mini boss to get the sort of
the pull down,
light power, the pull down. And then we're stripping his shield. So like at that point, I'm not really focusing on depuffing, suppressing him. But that's a very good point. Let us know.
Yeah, we'll have to play around with that, because that would definitely be the strat. Certainly on master difficulty, just to stay alive. Because when he is in super, that is probably the most dangerous moment, arguably in the whole dungeon. Because it's a small room and he can reach you everywhere you go with those shields or with the boop. So. Yeah, we'll have to play around with that, and if you've already found out through trial and error, do let us know, tag us please, because that is pretty important information. So, yeah, let's get into. I don't have any other weapons. It's just been shotguns, man. This is the shotgun encounter, and I love it. You know, I use what's that one that we were talking about last episode, the seasonal one? Where are you? Until Its Return, that rapid fire, I've got it crafted with overflow trench barrel. Man, that's just great. I have that on, and then when it's time to do boss damage, we swap over to tractor cannon or legend and just go to town. So, yeah, shotguns are what I recommend.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore Acreus and tractor, right? And it's just such a ridiculous weapon that I love to see. Love to see an opportunity where it's after its repeated buffs, it is worked its way keenly into the meta. Okay.
All right, Hunters, what do you recommend for your classes?
So much like the first encounter, Arc Hunter, again, that combination blow, flow state, lethal current, just for the high damage melee and the AoE jolting effect. Heavy-handed to get those orbs. For the super, it's Gathering Storm and Star Eater Scales. You can substitute Star Eater Scales out for Liar's Handshake or Assassin's Cowl if you're having that hard time. There's no harm in doing that. If you're not confident to get that 1-2 damage phase, then that's fine. You do not need Star Eater Scales. Assassin's Cowl really helps here. Going invis every time you kill with a melee or a finisher, and you get that health back. Liar's Handshake's also got the sort of mini health back thing as well. So yeah, Arc Hunter, Gathering Storm. You could also go Mobius Tether for debuff, or even Deadfall Tether. We tried Deadfall. I need to play it a little bit more often, see how effective that is, because there still are ads that infrequently spawn around the boss, or at least any ads that you've left up. They'll come down the stairs and they can get tethered by the Deadfall. So you could use that as a longer extension for a debuff rather than using Tractor Cannon. But yeah, it really depends. Silence and Squall as well, again, with the amount of ads that can spawn during this encounter, it can be chaotic, but Stasis is always great work, and you could also go Strand as well. Titans, what are you recommending? You did say use your body as a weapon.
Honestly, the Strand, like I said, with the opening is fine if you're on Master. Otherwise, you should pretty much be on Curus, because this is kind of a theme that will come back in the next encounter too, but dealing damage is like so critical. Like, these bosses have really large health pools in comparison to some of our previous bosses, or at least that is definitely the perception and the feeling. So having a really high damage super is really nice. And it could also make it, if you're going to be the teammate that is running Tractor Cannon, you can put some other like really good shotguns, maybe some like slug shotguns or rapid fire fusions in your other slots. And between using you hit tractor cannon, you thunder crash, and then you're immediately swapping over to some shotguns, or at least ash shotgun. We've got plenty of really good slug options these days. You're able to still put out sizable damage while being the debuff player, as it were. So would highly recommend that.
Yeah, and then for Warlocks, we're gonna be Well of Radiance, baby. Same old, same old. This time though, we are putting on Lunafaction boots for that reload speed benefit. So that means you need to select Healing Rift, because that is what determines which benefit Lunafaction gives you. So run Healing Rift for the reload speed benefit. I do see some people kind of having some confusion about where the well goes. Do we place it down in the pool of light? Do we actually go place it next to the boss, wherever the boss ends up? And then that way, if you're running shotguns, you're right next to the boss, especially if you need to hit the boss for Legend of Agrias. Again, I think that kind of is... It does depend. The boss, of course, when he's in his super, will throw the shields, but then if you are close enough, will just rush to you. It does kind of depend on what your fire team can remember. If your fire team has no problem remembering to go get into the pool of light buff to actually strip the shields, then yeah, go place the well right next to Ekthar if you can, just so you can get right close to him. He won't run away from you at that point. If you're having trouble killing the knight, and Ekthar does kind of charge at you guys, and especially if you lose a fire team member to one of those shields or both the shields, then I think you just kind of have to place the well wherever it is. But, that's a conversation that you'll probably need to have right there in the moment. But if you are trying to farm this encounter, I think the best bet is probably just to place it right down on the boss after you've stripped the shield, and then just go to town. Again, well will keep you alive. You don't want to get too close. He might knock you out of it, but you can quickly run back in. You're going to be safest in the well. Just start blasting away. That's really going to be the most important part. And if you are having trouble with him being aggressive, again, that's where Tractor Cannon can come in and really help out with that suppression. So that's my recommendation for the Warlocks. Very fun encounter. Probably my favorite dungeon encounter of all time so far. I know we're going to give our thoughts a little bit later on, but this is madness, but the best kind of madness.
Yeah, well, on to our final and last encounter. It is the last encounter. Is Simuma Nokru, which is the Lucent Necromancer. She's trying to revive orcs, the Taken King, which I'm all for. So you want to stop that by doing the whole imbuing 3 vestiges of light at various parts of Orcs' body. So combatants-wise, we've got plenty of ads continually spawning here. We've got lots of Lucent Moths. We've got 3 Boomer Knights around the arena, kind of top, left, and right. On Master, the Knights are replaced by barrier champions. Just take that into consideration. And remember, those Boomer Knights, once you kill them, they stay dead. They don't respawn. They'll respawn after each damage phase. So we have also a named mini-boss, and that is Warlock, Risen in Heresy. He is a unique roaming sword mini-boss knight that must be killed while you are standing in one of the highlighted body parts. So you don't need to kill him inside it. He doesn't need to be in the highlighted body part. You just have to kill him from that highlighted body part. So the boss roams and can absolutely beam you with her arc attack. So bring your arc resists, wrist runner maybe. She does spawn a bunch of moths every time you line up and reveal the hive glyph, and she'll teleport around the arena during the damage phase. So yeah, this is a fairly long encounter with plenty of mechanics, adds mechanics to do to juggle. Body parts will be in 3 locations. The chest or the heart will always be a location. Just a little kind of note here. Don't start from when you start revealing the actual glyphs. Do it from one of the other locations first, not the middle, because it won't work for every time you want to reveal it for every damage phase. So say it's the ankle, the chest, and the left hand. Go for either the left hand or the ankle, because it won't work from the initial heart location first. So if you and your team are confident, then 1 person for each Lucent Hive is in play. Otherwise, you just want to take it safe and take it slowly. Bring a friend along to defeat them. Remember the corresponding glyph, and whoever crushes the ghost has to dunk. I did read a few TWABs ago that the actual the icon isn't supposed to disappear when you crush the ghost. That isn't intended. It's supposed to stay up, because I did notice that, like, if I died on the way or if I didn't dunk in time, I would go back and the Lucent Hive doesn't. The Lucent Hive does respawn, but the actual symbol doesn't. So that does actually make a lot of sense that the symbol isn't supposed to disappear. But until they fix that, then do remember that symbol, write it down somewhere. The ads can absolutely wreck you. So again, you need to bring in some ad clearing potential. And really the damage phases here, it's pretty much 2 is the above average. You can one phase her, but again, much like the second encounter, you've got to be really efficient with your burst damage, your debuffs and buff stacking, or otherwise it's 3 or 4 damage phases, which again, perfectly valid. It's a long encounter though, so it's really kind of imperative to get those really high damage super weapons out in play. And once again, remember to crush your ghost. So what weapons are we recommending here? I've only really used Leviathan's Breath, so that's my big suggestion for weapons. For actual ad clearing, you have to swap Leviathan's Breath out for a linear fusion rifle. Saint was talking about the Briar's Contempt, Envious Assassin rewind rounds or Reconstruction, plus Frenzy or Surrounded. Surrounded definitely potential play here with the amount of ads that can spawn around the room while you're doing damage. So you can swap that out and instead use Wrist Runner for that arc resist. But do you guys got any suggestions for other weapons?
I was just going to say, going back to the very beginning of our kind of discussion of the dungeon itself, conditional finality with Acacia's Dejection and Briar's Contempt is like, if you want to capitalize on that, you're taking the deeper origins from the artifact. You can get up to 20%. Like, that's the loadout to do it on. Now, maybe with the hand cannon buff, our new kind of ritual buckle integration is viable, but for the time being, it's got to be conditional with Acacia's and Briar's. And like Court said, there's a lot of good ways to go with Briars. If you want to go for the high potential, getting surrounded is like not, it's a high requirement, but it's definitely like a possible requirement in this case. And then Frenzy is kind of like your safe bet there. But all very good. And plus conditional helps taking down those light bearers if you're not afraid to get a little bit close. And then Cassia's for the bug extermination, as it were, that you need to be managing throughout the whole encounter and really throughout the raid. Impetus?
Yeah, I want to specifically talk about what to do if you don't have conditional and you need a weapon that's going to burst down Warlock or the Lucent Hive when you go to pick up that symbol. I've been using fusion rifles to fulfill this job here. I do have conditional as well, but fusion rifles do give me a little bit more range, so I don't have to get too close in case, I need to go up against, say, the Lucent Hive Knight when they pop super. So Chill Clip Riptide has been really helpful there. Again, a Vorpal weapon, Riptide, if you need a fusion rifle up in that slot, would be really excellent. We did also just get that Strand fusion rifle, pressurized precision. That does roll Vorpal weapon. You could use that as well. If you need an energy slot fusion rifle, I think the gold standard, of course, is going to be Cartesian coordinate. That Vorpal weapon option is just so strong there. Trying to think if there's something else maybe in the energy slot that would do the job. There probably is, but I'm not thinking of it at the moment. But that's really what I use just to kind of burst down those higher health targets. I haven't struggled too much with the minor enemies. Like, I think a really good SMG that takes advantage of the surge would probably do that job quite well. But yeah, typically where I'm dying is to those Boomer Knights, to the Lucent Hive. For the most part, they'll just catch me off guard and rip me apart. So that's my recommendation there, is just be aware of that. Make sure you have weapons specifically that aren't your heavy weapon that you can use to burst those down quickly. You could probably use a sniper rifle or a shotgun if you really, really want to get up in there. That's not an exotic, but I think probably the safest bet all around would be a fusion rifle of some type with that relevant damage perk, and then of course your major spec.
For individual classes, again, Hunters, Gathering Storm. Now, this is a little bit more of a kind of tricky one to bring in because she does teleport, she can move, she's a wizard, so like she could be really squirrely in there. So you got to really be pinpoint accurate with that Gathering Storm throw. Arc combo blow that I've been talking about throughout this dungeon, very useful, especially to provide your teammates with orbs of power. But the actual super can be very risky because if you miss that, there's no damage. You've effectively wasted a super. You might as well use something else, which is why I would suggest either using Golden Gun or Blade Barrage, whatever you feel comfortable with, or you can go for Mobius Tether for the debuff. That's still reasonably good damage as well. But also debuff for yourself and your allies. But yeah, this one's a bit tricky to recommend Gathering Storm because of just how squirrely she is. Do we actually have any recommendations where you want to stand in this encounter? Because I've only really stood in the chest, which I know is not the best place. But I think I've started using either up top on Oryx's head or down on his foot. Do you guys have any kind of recommendations for placement?
I think on his head is probably the best, like, for like visibility on the boss, or like being able to kind of like shoot down at the boss is pretty nice. But it depends on what I'm using, because sometimes I'm like, all right, where can I get this surrounded procced up? Who's got some enemies over here?
Well, it's got to be the chest then, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go surrounded, because that's where the enemies naturally gather, which is kind of a risk of that, but I mean, it's for a huge benefit. So I was a fan of the head until she teleported up there for one of my runs, because that is one of the spots she can go. And when she's right next to you and you're trying to use Leviathan's breath aimed down sights for her head and she's blasting you, it makes for a very uncomfortable visual experience. So I do recommend the ankle, because I don't think she teleports down to the ankle, or at least if she does, it's not as close as to when she teleports up to the head, because she'll be right on top of you if you're up at the head. So yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, I think probably head's going to work for you like 90% of the time, and then that one time she'll teleport right next to you, and it's just going to make for a very hectic damage phase as she's shooting you.
It's pretty funny. I don't think I've ever seen her come up there, but that would be, she's like, hey, what's going on up here?
Yeah, it's one of, again, the chest is where I see a lot of people go, and there's just a lot of issues with that. Definitely don't recommend that for master difficulty. You will get blasted by the acolytes. But yeah, if you're in the chest and she goes up to the head, you kind of have to, depending on where the well's placed, you might have to stand out of the well to shoot at her. So you want to kind of get out of there. It may take some time, right, to depending on where the different runes are, depending on, or the plates are that need to be dunked, but you just want to set up for success. So if that means you have to lose a few seconds of the damage phase to get everybody together before the well's placed, so be it. But you don't want to put the well down in a place where you're going to get overrun as soon as the damage phase is over and all the other enemies spawn in. So yeah, it'll just kind of have to come down to your team here. I'll give a Warlock recommendation here. Of course, I've been talking about it already. Well, Radiance with Lunafaction, really for the reload buff, especially with Leviathan's Breath. Man, that thing takes so long if you are missing your crits. So you want to make sure that you are giving yourself and your teammates as much help as possible on that front. So yes, do run the Healing Rift so that you get the reload buff from Lunafactions. Stay in that well. Yeah, there's really, I mean, I would love to run Strand in here, but I just think during the damage phase, you want to make sure that you're setting your whole fire team up, or however many people you have running your with for success. You don't want to die, and Strand's lethality is probably going to be more of a benefit coming out of the damage phase when you have all those enemies spawn in, like those Boomer Knights again, and Warlock comes back. So that's probably where I would even save that super. So use Well Radiance, use healing. Set yourself up just for health and staying alive as much as possible over lethality, because again, there's no timer here. If it takes 10 damage phases, so be it. It takes 10 damage phases, but you at least get through the activity.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of getting through the activity, what time were we thinking to complete? Man. Probably, we've got 60 to 90 minutes for the first few runs. Probably longer than that, to be honest. It's one of the longer dungeons that we've had ever at this point. But once you start practicing, once you get those runs in, then looking at 40 to 45 minutes, I think that's the last couple of runs that I've managed to get. It's been 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but that's to be expected in this dungeon. The first encounter takes up a long time, and then the third encounter it also takes up a fair amount of time. But also in between first and the second encounter is almost like its own mini encounter itself of just traversing. And there's not really great opportunity to speed through that, unfortunately. So, yeah. But what are our thoughts on this dungeon? We've kind of been quite upbeat about it in this episode. We've talked about it in previous episodes. I came out on record on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server as well. This is definitely one of my favorite dungeons so far. I've played a fair amount, so I'm still in that kind of early kind of not nostalgia, but kind of honeymoon period for the dungeon, but I think this is going to be placed really high for me. I think probably even the highest. It ranks up there with, for me, Prophecy, Grasp of Avarice, and Duality. So some heavy praise from me. What's everyone else vibing?
Impetus, you go ahead.
I think this is definitely my favorite environment of a dungeon. Not that I could ever even categorize really the environments, because I do love pretty much every single environment of the dungeon, of all dungeons, but this is just a really cool experience. The underwater sections do take a while, but they just add so much to the experience of going down into that Lucent Hive ship, and then coming out of that and suddenly seeing Oryx there. It's so beautiful and epic. The boss fight, the final boss fight in particular, is too long for my liking, and that's really my one knock against this. But again, the first boss encounter does a lot to make up for it. Ekthar is just so much fun. Yeah, I don't know. This is definitely, I think Duality is still in front for me. I just like how those encounters feel, but it's close. I don't know. I do want to solo all of these dungeons, and I am dreading this one the most, just because it feels like it's going to be more of a marathon than an actual skill check of like how many times can I avoid Lucent Moths as opposed to outplaying all the other enemies. But I guess that is still a skill of sorts. But yeah, I really truly do love Ghosts of the Deep as a dungeon. How about you, Saint?
Yeah, I would definitely give it a solid 9 out of 10 on this guy. I think it would be number 3 in my top 3. Prophecy is like still number 1 for me because it was like so strange and just, yeah, I don't know. I just loved everything about Prophecy. But this thing is good. Yeah, it's like it's got good themes. It's got good enemies. It's got good weapons. Like, it's got good armor, right? Like what dude, what else do you want from a dungeon? I soloed Spire again to get the Guardian ranks 11 last season, and after going through that and having to like solo the Harpy boss, and I don't know if I'm super interested in going for like the solo or solo flawless on this one. It is, to Impetus' point, it is just such an absolute grind. You got 3 people in a fire team and you're all pretty optimized coming into these DPS bases. It's fine. It's nothing big, but trying to get to this solo is it's gonna be a slog, especially and just coming off of like Spire. But I don't know. That's about all I got. The armor, sick. Weapons, awesome. We're gonna be talking about those in just a second. The story, right, with Oryx, like the Oryx reveal at the end was sick. And all the
ghost memories. Oh my goodness. Ziva, harassed voice actress just popping the heck off.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is a fact right there. I don't know what to say. I say we jump into these weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So we'll start off with the wave frame, the New Pacific Epitaph. But before we get into that real quick, we'll talk about where can you get these weapons, and then our origin trait, Restoration Ritual, which is I think that'll make a lot of sense if you have played through this raid, or dungeon, I should say. So first up, our opening encounter, you can get the SMG, the Waveframe grenade launcher, or the rocket. And then in the second encounter, you can get the SMG, the glaive of the rocket, and then you can get any of the weapons in the final encounter, as well as the Navigator exotic trace rifle, which we talked about a little bit in our kind of first impressions episode of the season. Very, very fun weapon, pretty strong weapon, to be honest with you, these days. All the weapons and armor are farmable, with the exception of the actual trace rifle. That's still on like a 1 per chance per character, or 1 chance per character per week, just as dungeons are. But since it is the premier dungeon, it will be farmable until it enters the rotator around season 23. So get to farming, and don't forget that you can be farming. Now, real quick, we'll talk about Origin Trait Restoration Ritual. It states that you have a emergency reload prepared upon reviving an ally or finishing a combatant. Emergency reload automatically refills a portion, percent ish of your magazine from reserves the next time it reaches 0. So it's going to round up from the nearest whole number. And for the grenade launcher and rocket launcher, that's always 1, which is kind of an important thing to keep in mind, especially as we get down to the rocket launcher. Like, this is a cool trait, but I feel like it really comes in clutch when you get into using the rocket for some DPS phase, which we'll have a big breakdown of that at the end here. But we'll kick things off, like I said, with our stasis Waveframe grenade launcher. Now, this is the first Waveframe grenade launcher in the Kinetic slot. So we don't have any direct competitors, but we have a few very famous competitors, Forbearance, Deafening Whisper, Harsh Language, and Explosive Personality, kind of covering all of our different elements there. But this thing is set apart in that you can potentially be running it with the trace rifle of your choice, energy hand cannon, SMG, whatever may have you. On the base stats, we're looking pretty good. The band on these weapons isn't massive, but this thing nevertheless comes out with a strong stat package: 73 velocity, second to Forbearance by just a point, 71 handling, second to Deafening Whisper again by 1 point, 71 reload, which is tied with Forbearance for best. So honestly, pretty strong stat package. And if we take a look at our barrels and mags real quick, you take a quick launch, maybe you can pump up your velocity by 10, your handling by 15. That's going to put you up pretty high. Again, we're starting at 73 and 71 respectively there. And then again, if we look at our mags, we only have 2 options here. We're definitely going high velocity rounds, and that is going to give us plus 10 velocity and plus 10 reload speed, which is an incredibly important stat here. That is going to put us up to 81. And if you put a reload masterwork on that thing, you're looking at a base reload of 91 with no actual main traits or anything like that active, which is very high. When we look at our main traits in column 3, we've got Unrelenting, Lead from Gold, Demo, and Perpetual Motion. And then column 4, we've got Kill Clip, Harmony, Collective Action, Redirection, and Adrenaline Junkie. Quite a list here, quite a list. Court, what are you looking for on our new Stasis Waveframe grenade launcher first in slot?
Well, it's quite a classic pairing, but obviously it has to be Demo and AJ, because just a great pairing that. Demo obviously has that plus kind of bonus. When you use your grenade, you get that grenade back. I'm more so interested about the community kind of commentary. A lot of folks, we did mention this a few episodes ago, but a lot of folks were kind of wondering where Chill Clip is. And I can only give like a semi-educated guess here as to why we don't have Chill Clip here, and that's because it's Chill Clip is based on impact damage rather than kind of other types of damage, which is why, like, with a typical grenade launcher single fire, you have to hit the target with the impact rather than the explosive to get that slow stacks implemented, and Waveframes don't necessarily have that. But I think we've got some really juicer perks here. I think initially before I got this in my hands to play around with, I was kind of like, not a lot of kind of interesting pairings here. But once I've got a few rolls, I don't have Demo or Demo plus AJ. I think the one I've got is Unrelenting and Collective Action, which is a fairly good perk in its own right. The more I play with this grenade launcher, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually a really good choice. And yeah, it's our first one in our top slot. So yeah, Demo AJ for me. Impetus, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I'd take that role. I think the other one I'd want to pick up would be Demo Collective Action. Just really, really have fallen in love with that damage perk. But I don't even need Demo. I mean, I really would take a Lead from Gold, Collective Action, Demo, Collective Action, Unrelenting, Collective Action. All those would be good. I'm not a fan of Kill Clip just because I hate the reload. Again, we can't craft these, so I'd have to get really lucky with the reload masterwork. I mean, high velocity is guaranteed, but yeah, it's still a lot of reloading when I'd rather just be blasting. Demo, at least I can make up for that. And then Lead from Gold, of course, you know, again, there's ways to kind of spec into that where I can prepare reloads that don't even require me to proc the origin trait. So yeah, having to reload after every fire for Kill Clip and then just remembering that is going to be kind of the one thing that's annoying, whereas I can kind of with some other perks set up reloads automatically for me. But yeah, it's definitely a good first stasis wavering grenade launcher. Like I really don't have anything negative to say about it. Saint, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think, you know, I always say that Unrelenting is a really strong trait, and that's definitely one that like caught my attention. And I had a very similar mindset of Kill Clip. I was like just not interested, but it's okay. I've used it a little bit, and I'm actually like come around on it. I think that I would still prefer Collective Action or Adrenaline Junkie. But just because of the nature of the weapon, I am like not super opposed to using something like Unrelenting and Kill Clip, even though historically I'm in the same exact mindset of like Kill Clip is just not something I'm super interested on using in PvE, but it's acceptable, you know, and that's that's about all I got to say there. Probably Lead from Gold and Collective, or Unrelenting and Collective, would be really high on my list. Again, we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, but you got to keep in mind that you don't need to be collecting stasis shards to proc Collective on your stasis GL. I'm collecting so many ionic traces on my arc class that it's really easy to get that 20% damage buff up like a lot, like all the time, even before I reload. And that's like the one thing that Kill Clip is still always missing, right? You're not, it's 25%, that's great, but you're not getting the buff until that second shot. So that whole first shot that you had is wasted versus, I'm using some kind of arc trace and I can swap over to my new Pacific. You also have Epitaph there, Harmony there, which is fine. Probably still preferring Collective Action because I don't even need to get a kill with another weapon. I can just even throw a grenade, and that's either proccing, AJ times 5, it's proccing Collective Action, and that loop just really goes well there. And Lead from Gold for double special, can't deny its incredible potency.
So for Titans, for the Stasis subclass, you've got Tectonic Harvest, which you get stasis shards for shattering stasis crystals. You can probably see where I'm going with this. Pair that with Demo, and then obviously Collective Action, and there you go. Have fun.
Yeah.
Where was the...
that was a hand cannon. That was getting used. Some people might even say abused in the Crucible very early on in this season. But yeah, that remains incredibly strong in PvE.
So Glacier has a base cooldown, so tier 3 discipline of 152 seconds. So it's one of the longer grenades, but with Demo, you can definitely circumvent that particularly long cooldown for glacial grenades. But I think that's a very fair synergy there.
Yeah, plus you use...
Not that a lot of people are using stasis right now for any of the classes, to be honest.
Man,
well, no, it makes a good argument, though. And I was also going to say, you pair that with something like our new elemental charge mod, and then you throw in a grenade kickstart, you're just, you're feeding this build, which is a great loop. It's a great point there, Court.
I'm assuming that kill clip actually does synergize with the origin trait, right? Does the emergency reload screw with kill? I mean, surely they wouldn't put kill clip on a weapon that would. That does seem like a pretty obvious one that you'd want to. But I haven't gotten it to drop, so I haven't done personal testing. But I know that kill clip has very clear requirements for proccing when it comes to what types of reloads, and I would hate to see the restoration ritual one not be on the list.
Dude, I don't know. Now I'm second guessing myself, man.
Surely they didn't do that to us. Oh no.
Well, I know the particulars when it comes to kill clips triggering, and it's only two things, and that is a manual reload and the hunter dodge for auto reload. That's the two triggers that can only ever work with kill clip. Nothing else. Anything that like you trigger Whisper of Impetus, which I mentioned later on for the rocket launcher, that doesn't trigger kill clip. So I'm thinking it doesn't. But let us know. Yeah. Let us know in the comments.
I might need to go check Destiny Science channel real quick, because that seems like an oversight if there ever was.
Yeah, we'll get back to you in a correction segment next week if need be.
Either way, AJ and collective action will be more than enough, but
yeah,
that would be nice to make sure that the perk actually works with the origin trait that it shows up on.
All right, Court, you wanna kick us off with our next weapon here?
Yeah, so this is No Survivors. That's the Solar Aggressive SMG. That's 750 RPM. Last week, I was talking about Rapacious Appetite, which is the Stasis 750. So kind of a lot of comments overlapping here. So versus its archetype peers, its only direct competitor is Borrowed Time from Gambit from a while ago at this point now. But it did get recently updated with the Fuel Forged Origin traits. Other in-slot competitors include classics like the Iclos V3 SMG and Unforgiven for Arc and Void, respectively. So it's got 44 range, 7 more than Borrowed Time, tied with Iclos for the highest. Well, that's quite substantial considering Iclos had these insane stats. It's got 17 stability, 1 under Borrowed at 18, and 8 under Iclos. Okay. Okay, Iclos back on top. 57 handling, which is second highest with Iclos at 62, 26 reload, highest in the group, and 94 recoil, also highest in the group. That's quite substantial there. 94 recoil direction. Actually, yeah, same as Rapacious. So yeah, very competitive stat package considering how much the stat monster Iclos is. It sure is. So for highlighted barrels and magazines, for the barrels here, we've got small bore, +7 range and stability, hammer forge, which is +10 range, or corkscrew, which is +5 range, stability and handling. Not really interested in full bore, as that'll tank the stability all the way down to 7. Again, similar vibe as last week with the Rapacious Appetite. And really, for the magazine, it's any of the round options or flared magwell for the +15 reload. What this gun has over Rapacious is some really interesting perk combinations here. We do have surplus here if you're into keeping all your charged abilities for the 5, 15, 25 stability, 10, 25, or 60 reload speed, and 10, 25, and 50 handling. And that's respectively for 1, 2, 3 charged abilities. You've got Discord, this new perk this season. We've got Well Rounded, and of course Demo is in here as well. For the column 4, we've got Collective Action. Once again, that is definitely the perk that's being used a lot in many weapons this season, with it being brand new. We've got Target Lock, we've got Adrenaline Junkie, and Incandescent. Now, interesting, what pairings are we going to be using for the SMG? Saint, I'll pass it over to you. What are you thinking of running? Hoping to get, shall I say?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like demo jumps out, but hey, Discord, hey man, what's going on? That's some nice buffs you got going on there, and a pretty good duration. I think that one of the biggest complaints about using something like subsistence on a primary weapon is that subsistence is only giving you a percentage, of your mag based on whatever it is, weapon that you use. But it's gonna fully refund your mag, right? Or not refund, but fully refill your magazine, which is pretty nice considering that you can get this on a chaining 7-second timer here. And then I'm hoping to pair that with either Adrenaline Junkie or Incandescent. Either one of those would make a really good combo. There's also the way that Demo interacts with Incandescent, which, I mean, it just makes it like incredibly valuable because the way something like Incandescent counts as weapon damage. I really like that. But again, Discord is kind of a highlight for me here on a primary because of the way they can fully refund a magazine. I don't know. Impetus, how about you?
So I think I am hoping to eventually replace my Callus mini tool with a roll of No Survivors with Demo Incandescent. I think that combo is just stronger and more versatile than Threat Detector Incandescent, which is what I have on mini tool. The unique role that I am chasing here would be one with Collective Action. I think Demo Collective Action is probably, again, the most versatile role there, but I wouldn't overlook Well-Rounded either. That does pair well with Collective Action. Just based on the triggers for Well-Rounded, you need to throw a grenade or hit a target with a charged melee. If you kill them, there's probably a really good chance, depending on what you've got in your fragments, that you can get an elemental pickup to spawn with that kill. So you can get Collective Action to proc there, and you've got at least one stack of Well-Rounded going. That's helping out your range, stability, and handling. You'd need to probably account for reload speed at that point. That's the one thing that you won't get from Well-Rounded, but if you can get those elemental pickups flowing and, getting your abilities back, you're going to be sitting at a really, really well-feeling weapon that's going to be hitting quite well, going to have crazy good stability, crazy good handling, crazy good range, and it'll have that 20% damage buff. So that's definitely a combo if you get that to drop, because you can't craft these. I would hold on to it, just play with it, see how you like it. But for me, on paper right now, I'm definitely looking for a Demo Incandescent or a Demo Collective Action role to eventually replace the old mini tool, which has been a tried and true for a year now. Actually, it was a year ago the gun came out. So,
Court, how about you, man?
So, I'm a lot more interested in this weapon compared to Rapacious. I'm probably not going to use an Incandescent because I've got a Callus mini tool for that. But again, as we've mentioned before, you can't get the older weapons that kind of came out with their respective elemental perks like Incandescent or Volt Shot for the Iclos SMG. Then this is obviously your best option, but it's something that you have to chase. It's not something that you can craft, unlike the mini tool. But yeah, I think Demo is always a great pick when it comes to kind of weapons that you can put some firepower out. And Collective Action, it's a solar weapon. So I mentioned the build before where there's a fragment which you can put on, and any solar kills that you make with your weapons spawns a fire sprite. So it's very simple to just synergize with that. I think it was this weapon I was talking about when it came to that fragment plus Collective Action. Some really great pairings. Demo, AJ here, much like the Waveframe. Surplus, definitely kind of an interesting one. Just let me have a look at this on Foundry. Yeah, so if you've got all your this is, I know, Impetus, you mentioned this before, like you don't like having your class your abilities up. You'd rather just keep using them. But if you've got all three charged, then your handling goes up to 100 just with that perk. No other magazine or barrels attached. 76 reload and 42 stability. So that's definitely one that I could see. If this dropped, Surplus plus a Collective Action, I'd be like, okay, that's great. I'm okay with that. But yeah, well-rounded as well. Great pairing. Just some nice synergy. So my ideal would be demo, collective action.
All right. Well, yeah, man, solid guy right there.
I can take our next one here. This is our great name here, Greasy Luck. This is our first ever legendary rapid fire glaive. This is a solar glaive firing at 80 rounds per minute. For reference, this is the same frame as the Hunter exotic glaive Edge of Concurrence, which we talked about a little bit earlier on in this episode. So again, we don't have a lot of examples, but based on what we have so far, our guess is that the way this archetype works is you got a high rate of fire, high handling and reload speed with a large magazine that is offset by a very low charge time or shield duration, and then a lower impact. So don't have any we can't really make any stat comparisons because the only other archetype one is an exotic, and we don't do legendary to exotic comparisons. So range is 52, shield duration is 18, really low there, but high handling at 61, high reload speed at 63. So if you're looking at your barrels and your magazines here and you're thinking about, again, we can't craft it, so we're looking at this on paper only here, but I would look at the handling and the reload speed stats as ones that I could maybe bump down to get a buff in my shield duration in my range. I definitely am not hurting my shield duration here because it's already low enough as is. So for barrels, I'm kind of looking at super cooled accelerator. That's just -5 to reload speed and handling, but a +10 to range. That's always nice there for the projectile. You could also go auxiliary reserves. That's going to be -10 to the reload speed, but a +15 to your shield duration to take that all the way up to 33. So definitely a good option there, I think. As for the magazines, I'm going to be honest, I'll take anything but extended mag here, really. Alloy mag will be nice, appended mag for an extra shot in my magazine, bring that up from 4 to 5. Accurize rounds help out the range. Again, that's quite nice. Swap mag is definitely helpful. Light mag, again, +10 to the reload, +10, +5 to range. I'll take those. Those are already really strong perks. I'll make them even stronger, Really, I don't want to touch extended mag, even though I just said reload speed is one of those high ones. It's still -20 to the reload speed, and I don't feel like 2 extra shots is quite enough of a benefit to counteract that. So that's the only one that I'm hesitant on, but the other options I'll take, really. When it comes to columns 3 and 4, we have got a lot of really great, pretty much everything great that you want on a glaive is here, including a new perk in column 3 that we'll talk about. And it's not a new perk, but a first time appearance here. So we've got a movable object, column 3, great. Impulse amplifier, we've seen that one before. Disruption break is the new appearance. This is in column 3 here. Really solid perk, right? Just breaking an enemy shield with this weapon makes them more vulnerable to kinetic damage for a brief period. And yes, the glaive melee is kinetic damage, so this is a great way to give your glaive melee attacks a damage buff after you break your shield with the projectile. We've got Replenishing Aegis also in column 3 and Lead from Gold. Really solid options. The only other one I didn't mention is Killing Wind. I just don't think that has enough to compete with the other 5 perks I've mentioned. Moving on to column 4, again, keeps getting good here. Unstoppable Force, Collective Action, Redirection, Close to Melee, Incandescent. I think Incandescent's probably the one that maybe isn't quite as unique, really. Judgment of Kelgorath also gets incandescent, and that one's craftable, so if you really need an incandescent glaive, I'd probably point you in that direction. But Unstoppable Force, that one did show up on Lubri's Ruin. Collective Action, though, Redirection, Close to Melee, those are all unique to Greasy Luck, as is. So a lot of really great perks here. I did get a Disruption Break, Close to Melee, Greasy Luck to drop during my one dungeon run this past week. That's the really solid synergy there. Close to Melee, Glaive Projectile, Final Blows, the improved Glaive melee damage. Projectile where melee damage extends the duration. So you can see that synergy there with Disruption Break. I'm popping a shield with the projectile of the glaive, and then I go in for the melee, the buffed up melee there. Quite strong, quite a lot of fun. So that is the combo that I was chasing, and I've got it, and I can recommend it. Saint, what's standing out to you here for Greasy Luck?
Yeah, Disruption Break is it's just like automatic synergy. It's insane how strong this is on a glaive. Not to like impulse amplifier with the projectile velocity. No, it's really nice. Replenishing Aegis, where you get your mag reloaded when you're blocking, could kind of circumvent something like extended mag if you end up stuck there. Lead from Gold, we praise a lot, but I just like ammo economy on the glaive is not really ever a concern because I just don't find I'm using the actual projectile shot that much, even though it is there. I've got to agree with Impetus and keep going after that disruption break and close to melee roll, because the way you can proc up such a high damage potential and then just kind of keep it rolling there with close to melee when you're in the right zone. Now, close to melee, you got to get the kill, but it's really, that's not super hard to do to you turn to an acolyte or something like that. You break a wizard, you kill the acolyte, you turn to the wizard, you break his shield, and you just tear the thing to pieces. Incredibly strong combo there. Definitely really fun to use. Court, how about you, man?
Well, I was just looking at the multiplier. So that would be 1.5 times 1.3. And that brings it up almost to double damage. So 200%. It's 95%. Sorry, 100%. So it's, double damage. A bit of a niche case, though, because you do need to find something that's got a shield and something else that's got a shield, then proc close to melee to get that damage buff, then something else that's got a shield, proc the kinetic disruption break, and then you've got the glaive almost 100% extra damage. So a little bit niche here, but yeah, I'm all for niche perks. I'm all for niche pairings, and that's I don't have. Was it close to melee? Actually, it might have been Unstoppable Force, which is projectile damage. It's not glaive melee damage that I had. But I was mostly interested when I got the disruption break roll. I was like, I wonder if this actually works for the glaive melee, and it does. So, not entirely sure if that works or if that's supposed to be working like that, if it's intended. But glaive melees are weird. They're almost kinetic, but they're not quite, because they don't take kinetic surges and they don't take some other kind of perks that deal with kinetic damage and that, or kinetic modifiers.
Yeah. Looks working as intended to me, I'm sure. Right? Looks good to us, right? Yeah.
All right, Mr. Titan. Something that is absolutely working as intended.
Oh boy.
It is Cold Comfort. This is going to be kind of almost like a mini breakdown within a breakdown. I've already done a massive breakdown when it came to rocket launchers fairly recently for the season, so go have a look at that on Reddit. But yes, this is our Stasis Aggressive Rocket Launcher. That is 54.5 RPM. That is accurate. Don't look at the rate of fire in-game. That is not accurate. And that's actually one of our highest RPMs for a rocket launcher. Is higher than adaptives, which are, I think it was 51.5 if memory comes to save me here. This is also the one rocket launcher frame that has the highest damage profile frame, also with adaptives. So it's 21% increase over precisions and 10% increase over high impacts. So yeah, same damage frame as adaptive, so that's your Hothead, your Red Herring's Apex Predator. So that means intrinsically high reload and velocity, and intrinsically low blast radius and handling. I still see some comments here regarding blast radius when it comes to rocket launchers. If this reduces or if it increases your damage, so if you've got 100 blast radius, does that mean I'm doing a higher damage than a rocket launcher that's got 50? This is not the case for rocket launchers. It is for grenade launchers, this weird subject that I don't get myself involved with. The impact and blast radius are kind of tied to a ratio, and if you increase one and decrease the other, you get varying impact and explosive damages, which is where people maybe are getting confused with. But when it comes to rocket launchers, No, it doesn't change. So theoretically, a 10 blast radius aggressive rocket launcher has the exact same damage profile as a 100 blast radius aggressive rocket launcher. Damage changes are due to the rocket frames and damage altering perks, nothing to do with the explosive from blast radius. And like I said, I write up these rocket launcher breakdowns on Reddit every season if you want to go into that particular nitty-gritty detail. When it comes to archetype peers, we have one, finally when it comes to these type of weapons, Bump in the Night, which is the stasis craftable aggressive frame. We also have His Vengeance, which is your Vault of Glass Solar. It also has an Adept Time Lost variant. And we also have, which is, it's not an aggressive, but is your adaptive, which is also came out this season, and that is your Apex Predator. But we're not pairing it with that. We're pairing it with Bump in the Night and His Vengeance. A reminder, craftables with the enhanced intrinsic get +2 in all of the stats that isn't the intrinsic stat, which gets +10, and fully masterworked adepts get +3 in all the other stats that isn't the masterwork stat, which gets +10. So, stat-wise, 69 velocity, joint second with Bump, Hezen at 79, 23 handling, joint highest with Hezen, Bump at 19, 62 reload highest, which is it puts it at the highest, Hezen's at 60 and Bump at 58, and 45 inventory size stat. So that's joint highest with Hezen, Bump at 40. The Bump is the only one out of the three that can roll with field prep, which can also be enhanced to provide a much higher efficient bonus. So Cold Comfort's got 45, Hezen Vengeance got 50. They're in the same realm of kind of the hierarchy. So they both come out with the following total ammo capacity. So at base, no reserve mods, that's 7. With 1, it's 8. With 2, it's 9. And with 3, it's 10. And again, they don't roll full field prep. On the other hand, Bump in the Night, which has 40, so it's a lower one, has the following. So it's 7, 8, 9, and 9. So you don't get 10 with 3 reserves, but it does roll with field prep, which gives you the following. That's 8, 9, 10, 10. And then field prep enhanced, it's 9, 10, 10, 10. So 1 reserve with enhanced field prep, you get the maximum of 10 rockets. So Bump in the Night is extremely ammo efficient with enhanced field prep, but Cold Comfort, along with His Vengeance, has 2 of very few non-field prep rockets that can get 10 total ammo capacity at 3 reserves. His Vengeance got that really unique overflow combo. We haven't seen that since. But Cold Comfort's got the cooler overflow combo as it's got the potential to output 4 rockets in 1 magazine, or 6 if you're using bipod, and I'll talk about a build shortly as well. So barrels and magazines here for the barrel, quick launch for that +10 velocity and +15 for the handling. And the magazine here, you want impact casing, that's a 2.2% total damage increase. So for highlighted breakdown, our main perks. Column 3, we've got Evian's Assassin. We do have tracking module, that is here. I think, as a side tangent here, I think I've grown a lot more warmly to the tracking module perk compared to previous seasons, as we get more kind of unique and varied bosses who are like moving around a lot more often. It comes to mind the wizard at the end of this dungeon comes to mind for if you're using rockets, then tracking module you have to use for that wizard who likes to float away everywhere. Really frustrating. But you also have Ensemble. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this. If it's something that drops and you can't get another perk, then yeah, go for it. Ensemble is a really strong effect. It has, let's see, it's got +30 handling and +40 reload speed, all for just standing nearby an ally within 15 meters, and it lingers for 1.5 seconds. I've got a few stats here. I won't read them out. It's mostly to do with reload speed. You can get up to 2.61 second reload speed if you are pairing Ensemble with Quick Launcher, and 2.65 reload speed if you're pairing that with Tracking Module and Alloy Casing instead of Impact Casing. Alloyed Casing gives you that +30 reload which really comes down to probably good for a rocket launcher that can't, tag into the whole I can get 4 rockets in one magazine, so it's not as useful here. So probably avoid alloy casing and just stick to impact casing. Apex Predator is your adaptive frame, but it does need a little bit more build crafting in order to get those short reload speeds. And remember, reload and handling can be circumvented with loader mods, various aspects and fragments, flow state, on your mark, thread of ascent, and abilities like rally barricade and lunafaction boots, which you see a lot when you've got a Titan and a Warlock in your fire team. When it comes to Envious Assassin, Saint, you want to give us a quick rundown on what that constitutes for each trigger for the magazine count?
Yeah, so basically it's Envious is going to be procced off of your rapid kills there, but it's kind of finicky. You want to ensure that you have expended any extra ammo you have from a previous Envious Assassin trigger if you haven't already. So you can't trigger Envious Assassin and then trigger Envious Assassin again, right? You got to swap to the Envious Assassin weapon within 10 seconds to gain that magazine count. Otherwise, your counter will reset. After you get 6 special weapon kills, you swap to Cold Comfort and you lock in your magazine count of 3. After doing this, you can go back to your other weapon and it's not going to detract rounds from your rocket launcher, right? So once you proc that Envious Assassin with 3 rounds in your rocket, it's not going to go away. Use primary or special, right? And if you want to trigger this, but you can't be using both. Fusions, Waveframe GLs are kind of the best to do this. Again, we were talking about like Forbearance earlier. We were talking about new Pacific Epitaph, right? Even from this exact dungeon, could be really good. Kills made by a primary weapon, +1 if it's 1 to 10 kills, or +2 if it's 11 plus kills. And then kills made by a special weapon, you're going to get +1 if it's 1 to 5 kills, or +2 if it's 6 plus kills. So again, here we've got 3 rounds in the mag via Envious Assassin. If you are using Bipod, that's going to put you up to 5. Now, with the Origin trait, getting the +1 mag after you emptied it, if you have that Restoration Ritual active, you could get up to 4, 6 if you want to use Bipod. We know that Bipod isn't super popular, but we just talked about it's getting a buff in the recent TWID that was mentioned. It's going to be tuned up, we think, next season. So the ability to shoot off 6 rockets in a row is definitely going to take some setup, but good Lord, that's a lot of rockets right there, man. I don't know. I think the biggest takeaway here, or the biggest thing to remember here, is that whenever you proc that Envious Assassin, it's not going to go away. You can proc Envious Assassin, take your rocket launcher out, and then you're gonna have that locked in. Let's see.
For column 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's get into the damage perks. Court, you go ahead.
Yeah. So collective action makes an appearance here with this rocket, but it's probably not going to be utilized as much because we've got Explosive Light, which is our bog standard rocket launcher perk here, and we've got Bait and Switch. So it joins Apex Predator to also roll Bait and Switch. So as we talked about last week, Bipod, it's been announced to be getting a change. We don't know what that entails, so we can't really recommend it. If you do get one, keep it. Do keep that in your vault, just so you can play around with that potential buff to Bipod. But yeah, that 40% decrease is just for at least for this role. It's much better to go down the Explosive Light or Bait and Switch route. But yeah, Bipod does increase the total ammo capacity. So again, at base, no reserve mods, that's 12. At 1, it's 13. At 2, it's 14, and at 3, it's 15. So really, it's a toss-up between Explosive Light and Bait and Switch. Both are viable for their own reasons. For me, anyway, Explosive Light's only setup is to pick up 6 orbs of power, very simple, and it can be done passively, and even if you don't have it equipped, you get that plus 100 blast radius and the 25% damage increase. Apex Predator has the slight edge here, where you can enhance it, and you get 7 stacks of Explosive Light. Explosive Light isn't affected by Wolfpack rounds. We've tested that since kind of Wolfpack rounds and Explosive Light's been a thing, and for every season they haven't changed it, so it appears to be intended when it comes to Explosive Light. So in this case, you want to spec into reload. For bait and switch, obviously requires a lot of cycling through your weapons, and of course your first rocket will not be affected, but that is a 35% damage increase for 10 seconds. Apex also gets this. You get 11 seconds if it's enhanced. Bait and switch does affect Wolfpack rounds. We have discovered that. Shout out to Rock DC for testing those interactions. And for here, it's really, again, a mini toss-up between handling or reload, and then offset the other with other modifiers as listed previously. So my personal recommendation would be bait and switch for Cold Comfort and Explosive Light for Apex Predator. We'll talk about the Last Wish raid weapons in a future episode. But for here, you get more opportunity to utilize bait and switch if you maximize the reload benefit, which is fairly easy to do on an aggressive rocket launcher. And yes, you have to spend a rocket to activate bait and switch, but you have a much larger magazine to offset early reloading that Apex would need. And for the mass work, reload or handling, and for weapon perk, obviously it's boss spec or major spec if you're using it for mini bosses and champions. That being said, this is something that you have to chase. You have to get the god roll, whereas Apex is kind of, well, you just you get it, you craft it, and that's it. So it's I'm actually really enjoying this kind of tug rope kind of back and forth between, is it Cold Comfort, or is it Apex Predator, or is it something else? And it's very interesting, this kind of fight between the two. Impetus, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I know myself, I miss plenty of rockets, so for me, I'm with you on the tracking module part. Like, it, doesn't really matter how many I've got in the chamber. If I'm going to be missing quite a few of them, then that hypothetical optimal DPS is still just as unobtainable as if I only had one rocket in the mag. So yeah, if I get Envious and Bait and Switch, or Envious Explosive to drop, sweet. But if I get Tracking Module Bait and Switch, or Tracking Module Explosive Light, or Tracking Module Bipod, since that may be an option in the future, that's probably what I'll go with. But it's important to know what these how these perks interact, which is why Court's done all this fantastic testing. So you're aware of it now, and so if you have any of those rolls that have dropped, go for it. But again, I mean, you know yourself better than we do if you're missing rockets, if that's not if that's something that you still struggle with targets and stuff. Maybe this isn't the role for you, and that's fine. You just need to make sure you land your shots. And so I'm kind of right there with you in that I would probably also take a tracking module, but it'd be cool to at least get the role that allows for some pretty crazy damage phases from one rocket. So yeah, I mean, Envious is definitely cool. I'm excited to see what comes with Bipod. I think that could be really interesting. That might even free up tracking module to more people, since you can get 2 in the mag there, especially if they maybe cut that damage reduction in half. But we'll see. This is definitely a really, really solid, really fun, non-craftable rocket launcher. I've got nothing else I can say about it. How about you, Saint?
I think this is like the weapon that makes Restoration Ritual shine. It's cool to have it on your other weapons, but man, this is like it feels like a whole perk's worth of benefit on this rocket launcher, right? And I've talked about this before, but I'm definitely somebody to chase down unique things, even if they are not necessarily meta at the time. And that is why my vault lives at 500 plus, but it's what I got to live with. I definitely am. I'm definitely still looking for a bipod roll on this, just because I'm hoping that thing is going to come out in a good state whenever we see that change made at some point in the future. I definitely am looking for that Envious Assassin and Bipod plus Restoration Ritual just to get a crazy amount of rockets off at once. I mean, other than that, I don't know. I also like bait and switch because of the way we've talked about this with Apex Predator a little bit, but bait and switch is so its impact is totally measured off your ability to get off enough rockets within the time frame of proccing bait and switch. So the idea of being able to overflow this with Envious Assassin and then also benefit from that Restoration Ritual reload while on bait and switch is going to make it even easier to get off more rockets while your 35% buff is active. And yeah, I mean, it's still really good to have that reload perk in the background to kind of bump up and make sure that you can get those rockets off, but very, very appealing. And I'll definitely be grinding for it a little bit. And again, since I kind of know what I'm going to put on my Apex Predator, this one I'll probably keep a bipod roll on with Envious Assassin just to see how that turns out, because I know I'll have that bait and switch on my Apex. But honestly, RNG is RNG, and I will take any good combo of those perks that I can get on this thing.
Well, speaking of being able to sustain bait and switch, we've seen this with previous weapons, we've seen it with previous rockets, but this is the sort of no reload meme build. Maybe not necessarily a meme, because you could bring this in and you'd be doing a lot of serious damage over time. This is more for your longer damage periods. So the role here is impact casing, envious, bait and switch, and obviously procced Restoration Ritual. You get 4 rockets, that's your initial magazine. So remember to expend it down to 0 to get that +1 for Restoration Ritual. Pair with Hunter's Marksman's Dodge, which you get 1 rocket in return, which is based off your dodge cooldown, +1 if you're using 6 Coyote. Pair with Sealed Ahamkara Grasps if you're a Hunter, or Stasis Whisper of Impetus. 1 rocket, 7-second cooldown on melee hit with Sealed Ahamkara Grasps, or 1 rocket, 5-second cooldown on Stasis melee hit from Whisper of Impetus. +1 for a second stasis melee hit. Again, this is more so for hunters who get 2 shurikens. And there you go, you've got 8 rockets in 1 magazine if you're using Coyote plus Whisper of Impetus. A lot of kind of hoop jumping here, a lot of kind of juggling with the time, micromanagement, but theoretically you could have it higher if you space out with the short dodge cooldown, that's 17 seconds at tier 10 mobility, or if you have stasis, then picking up stasis shards, 10% per small, 50% per large, or 17.5 and 75% respectively, with one of the fragments that escapes me. I didn't put it in the script here. It is Hunger, Whisper of Hunger. So yeah, if you can sustain that, you would need to, halfway through that, you would need to swap back to your other weapons to reset up bait and switch, because bait and switch is only up for 10 seconds anyway. But there you go, something that you could pair with. But yeah, you need all the planets and the stars to align for this god roll to drop for you, because good luck. Any final thoughts, lads, on these weapons in the dungeon itself? We have we've finally breached 2 hours on the recording for an episode. That hasn't happened for a while, but I think if we're having these longer type episodes, it's because we're enjoying the type of content and the weapons that have dropped.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Can't wait till we get to the last wish weapons. Might break 5 hours. So. It's a joke, Otto. We won't do that.
I feel like New Pacific Epitaph was not super well received, and this could just be my own kind of the tweets I read, the subreddits I visit, the YouTube videos I see within my little bubble.
I'm the same thing. I thought that as well.
This is such a good weapon. What are you talking about, man? This thing is...
People were expecting Chill Clip and they didn't get it, so they were like, "Oh no, well, that's going in the trash."
Doesn't have chain reaction. Get it out of here. And I'm like, dude, what?
We don't need one.
Yeah,
we've already got one of those.
I mean, I would like a chain reaction.
Oh, sure.
Chain reaction strand waveframe. Okay.
Yeah. And that
green explosions.
That's great. right? Chain reaction hatchling. I would love to see it on.
Don't get me excited now.
Okay,
don't do that.
But oh man, Unrelenting, Lead from Gold, demo. Collective action, Adrenaline Junkie, Kill Clip. So many great options on this thing. How can you deny a demo AJ Waveframe or any Unrelenting? There's just so much good stuff on there. Even though it's doesn't quite benefit as much from Restoration Ritual as the rocket launcher does. It's just such a good weapon. Definitely my highlight. And the armor set. Good Lord, does this armor set look good on, I think, every class. I don't know what y'all's opinions are, but...
Oh, no, it's a juicer.
Yeah, it just so good. So good.
I will say, if you are looking to farm for weapons... Ekthar is probably the encounter to do it. You can, again, 1 phase, but it's also a fast 2 phase. If you're not super optimal, that does drop the SMG, the glaive, and most importantly, the rocket launcher. So that's probably the one to go for. Unfortunately, Epitaph, the grenade launcher, is dropping from the first encounter, which is not very fast. And then, of course, anything can drop in the final boss encounter. So that'll be a hard one to chase, but... If you are going for the rocket launcher, if you are going for the SMG or the glaive, do Ekthar. Ekthar is fast.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up here. That is it for episode 67. Good luck in the dungeon and getting those juicy rolls. Not sure what we'll be talking about next week. We do have plans, as we've said during the episode. We're going to be covering the Last Wish weapons very shortly. I know that's coming up on the Raid Rotator. If you remember, it was week 1 when it came to Last Wish, so everyone was in there immediately. But we'll be covering that very shortly. Not next week, but probably the episode after that. So yeah, thank you once again to our amazing patrons, sponsors, and of course you, the listener. We also want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidaktos, who keeps us sounding fresh every week. My name is Court. You can find me on Discord and Twitter as Court Projects. You can find my spreadsheets and infographics over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website, along with other applications and spreadsheets to enhance your Destiny experience. Saint, where can we find you?
Yep, my name is Saint Kabr. You can find me at Saint_Kabr on Twitter and Discord. Shout out the name changing rework. And then you can find updates for the show and new episodes and all that kind of stuff at Destiny Massive Breakdowns over on Twitter. Impetus?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.